It's too soon for Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, but I'm very annoyed that Nightmare Before Christmas is not a Halloween movie. And they're showing it right now on Disney Plus as like a whole October thing.
A Nightmare Before Christmas.
Have you not seen the Tim Burton Nightmare Before Christmas with Jack Skellington? And he is the Halloween king who takes over Christmas and learns a valuable lesson about Christmas?
If it's Tim Burton, I probably haven't seen it.
How do you not like Tim Burton? He's too weird for you?
No, it's not weird. It's like I was never down with the puppets. Like I'm a special effects. The puppets.
But okay, hold
Yeah.
on. So special effects are the practical real world effects. CGI and computer graphics are all the things. So like Star Wars original is Tim Burton style practical effects.
I know.
Okay.
I hated the creatures in Return of the Jedi. That little thing that jumps up on the roof and he's like, I was like, that looks like Tim Burton shit, and I hate it. It's like any
Wow.
moment Sesame Street characters are gonna come out and start doing like 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm like, I hate Tim Burton. And then what's even worse is, didn't he marry that?
Helena Bonham Carter.
He married Helen Bonham Carter, and then she's in every single damn Tim Burton movie. And then her and Johnny Depp ended up like in every single movie together. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that whole I smell like patchouli oil crew, hippie liberal acting group. I do not like. No.
All right. Welcome to Acceptance Criteria, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of how software gets made and how we can all do a better job together. My name is Kevin Thomas Euland, and across the chat from me is Andrew Greener. Say hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. We're also here to get deeper in the human elements. I could go on for an eternity about people and how they think about the process of building complex systems, and I can't think of two better people to do that than Kevin and I.
I'm sure there's a third person out there somewhere. If you've got a topic you'd like to come discuss or rant about, drop us a note and we'll see if we can get you on a future episode. You can go to acceptancepod.com/guest and submit your ideas. And a quick reminder, whether this is your first episode or you've been listening for a while, we wouldn't say no to your going and dropping 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leaving us a nice review. And if you want to leave us a bad review, remember the name of the podcast is The Adventure Zone. Also tell your friends if you like the show and that they should check it out. Some of the best podcasts out there go by word of mouth, and we'd much appreciate it.
We're also building a community on Reddit at r/acceptance criteria and on Discord. You can find links to both in the show notes and on the blog. And I promise we'll be moderating the crap out of them to keep it a nice little slice of the internet.
On this week's show, we'll be going over some breaking news in the self-driving car industry, although I suppose at this point we recorded that episode probably close to a month ago, so it's slightly less breaking news, but still some interesting stuff going on as we talked about self-driving cars, getting into like the industry state of what's going on there.
Sounds like an action-packed episode, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a good line reading, Greener.
What? It was good, right?
No, it sounded totally canned and fake.
It did?
Yes.
You want me to do it again?
No, I want you. No, your original thing was fine, but it's an action-packed episode was cheesy as hell.
Oh yeah, that was cheesy. Yeah.
But before we get to all of that, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is a segment we like to call Market Factors, where we talk about industry news stories and trends we're observing. Mostly it's an excuse to rag on bad decisions and argue with each other whether some new piece of tech is worth it. So, as I said, today we're going to dig into the current state of self-driving cars and look at some news stories in that area. So, the first one here is critical safety gap between Tesla drivers and systems was cited by the National, what does NHTSA stand for? It's basically the National Driver Safety Federal whatever. Highway Traffic Safety? There you go.
Yeah, administration.
Look at that. The Brit knows more about the federal government and terminology. But they are launching a probe into the latest Tesla recall. So in December of 2023, Tesla recalled 2 million vehicles to patch the driver assistance software because and actually they only did the recall after the feds started investigating a series of crashes and deaths. And so they did the recall in December of 2023. And then by April of 24 this year, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration was investigating Tesla again after 20 crashes crashes happened after the software patch from the December recall. And it was a, quote, critical safety gap between drivers' expectations of Tesla's driver's assistance systems operating capabilities and the system's true capabilities, which led to foreseeable misuse and avoidable crashes. And so basically, Tesla overpromised what their self-driving capabilities could do. Drivers then relied on it too much. Going back to your example of humans crashed the plane because they couldn't believe that the autopilot was wrong. Human beings will just trust the software that's put in front of them. And correctly, they are investigating Tesla for why that's really, really bad when you're driving a car. So not a great traffic safety record from Tesla so far on their self-driving car capabilities. You have one. How's that going for you?
Yeah, it's going well actually. And we had a recall the other day, and it's weird when you say recall because they just remotely updated the software for us, so happy owners. But it is interesting. Like, what has been the penalty for them? Is it just something that insurance looks at and is like, cool, this life is worth 2 million, like, or is it? Because you would think it'd be a compound, right? Like Tesla kills somebody, and then it's like you killed somebody, and then you kill somebody else. You would think it's like an X factor where it's like, yeah, but you already killed someone, so it's not 2 million for that one and then 2 million for this one. It's like 2 million and then 20 million, because until you stop killing people,
Right.
we have to up the punishment, right?
Right.
Like, but it seems like they're getting to do QA live, and you know me, I always joke I'm on Tesla's side, right? Like I it's not that I want to evolve the way we evolve. I don't think there will be another way. I don't think there'll be a conscientious way we evolve. But yeah, these guys they're sort of QA in live, which is never a good thing.
No, but it goes to, like, we've had this discussion. I'm assuming it survived the cut, but you never know. I might have to pull it out of the vault at some point. We have talked about, like, the way companies just get a slap on the wrist and you bake into the business just the expectations of, oh, well, QA is going to kill 40 people and that's going to cost us $50 million, and then the government's going to fine us $10 million. So our budget for 2024 needed to be $60 million higher. Cool. That's a rounding error when you earned $2.3 billion last year, right? So it is to your point, like, there's no escalation. The Highway Traffic Safety Administration doesn't get to come in and suddenly be like, well, now you owe us 10% of your revenue until you fix this problem. Like, there aren't a lot of controls in place to do that. So there aren't a ton of disincentives for Tesla right now.
Which is interesting, because let's draw the parallels between another show where we talked about Boeing, right? Like, if this was I think this is the challenge, right? Is problems with planes are dramatic. People are like, I don't want to fall out of the sky.
Right.
It's like, but then you look at Tesla and you're like, but wait a minute.
We all drive past a car crash once a week, right? So it's just,
they're actually killing people too. It's just you're on the ground. And there's not as many. There's not 200 people in this, in the car.
And we've gotten desensitized to it. Car crashes are just a thing. It's what the nightly news reports on. There were 4 car crashes today.
And that's exactly where I was going to go. It's almost like we become so desensitized to the point where, you know me, I'm always like, well, if that person gets that medicine and that person dies, but it proves that they figure out, like, hey, cool, we can actually save 1 million people and this person was a sacrifice. That's just how humanity evolves, right? But yeah. But there's a line, and self-driving cars was never really included in that.
Right.
These people are progressing humanity. It's like, no, they're not. No, they died because the software in your car is not good, right?
Also, there's an entire, like, billion of you on this planet who won't shut up about the fact that one guy's son died for all of us, and that one sacrifice was somehow supposed to be the thing we all focus on. So there is a Christian angle here that I'm like, which way is it? Which way is more? What is one life okay to sacrifice, or do we all have to pay for that for the next 2,000 years?
20 years ago, I would have been offended. Now I'm just going to pray for you. So yeah, so you know me, I'm on the darker side of humanity, but I do think they're getting a bit of a pass on these people are making self-driving better. It's like, no, they died because the self-driving cars are not ready, right?
And because they were basically, the conclusion of this report in April was Tesla lied to them. You can call it overpromising or misalignment of user expectation with software delivery, blah, blah, blah. But basically, a bunch of people thought their car was going to drive itself more than it was capable of doing, and were negligent behind the wheel through no fault of their own, other than consumers are all morons and should be. Anyway, that's a bigger topic probably for another episode.
Yeah.
I do think so. Along those lines, the Cybertruck, Tesla's ridiculous, ugly, non-pickup truck, has had its 5th recall in under a year. So this time it's because the rear view camera image may be delayed by 2 seconds after shifting into reverse, and the display may appear blink for up to 8 seconds when the vehicle is in reverse, according to a report from Tesla. So Tesla shared this report with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration from their own conclusions from why they had to do this recall. It's the fifth one. They had a weird thing with the brake pedal. They've had a weird thing with pieces falling off. The Cybertruck is a piece of crap that shouldn't be allowed on the streets, and the regulators in Europe are like, no, this is a safety hazard. You're not allowed to sell it here. So Cybertruck, please don't buy one. It's not ready for prime time if it's ever going to be.
Is that right? They don't sell them in Europe?
There was just a thing that, I mean, they might be selling them in Europe now, but the European Commission is like, oh no, this doesn't meet any of our safety expectations. It's full of sharp edges and is way too wide. Like, that's a thing people didn't realize, is they built the Cybertruck too wide, so it doesn't fit in a bunch of parking spots because it's wider than the typical car. Like, even a Ford F-150 can fit in a parking spot.
Did we ever figure out why? Do we ever figure out why with the
Why?
Cybertruck? Like, why?
Why did they build a Cybertruck?
Well, it still feels like an afternoon bet. I bet you I can build a Cybertruck.
It's that episode of The Simpsons from one of the early seasons I don't love rewatching, but where they let Homer design the car, and it's that weird thing with the bubble and the two driver's seats, and the just like, you let a moron into the design factory and then somehow approved what he came up with. I mean, that moron's name is Elon Musk, but yeah, it's not
it's
good.
just such a, it's just like, because it's, you can be minimalistic, right? And you can be funky
Sure.
in your design, but you can also appear lazy. And
Right.
I think that's my challenge with the Cybertruck is you look at it and you go, oh, cool. Like, there must be some benefit to that, right? Like,
Right.
there's got to be some benefit to it looking like that. And then you realize there's not actually
No.
a benefit to it at all.
And there's weird things where they're so proud that you can fire an AR-15 at it and it won't break the glass. And then they showed a firefighter trying to prove how they won't be able to save your life because they can't break the glass and because they can't break into the door. And the jaws of life struggle on the car. And like, the toxic masculinity bros out there are like, oh, it's so great that this is a tough car made for tough people. And it's like, no, dipshit. You're gonna die burning to death when the lithium battery explodes on you and the firefighter can't pull you out because you needed a bulletproof window. Morons. Just absolute idiocy from top to bottom.
Yeah, it's a weird truck.
It is. So self-driving cars in general, moving away from Tesla a little bit. Researchers at the University of Central Florida, so you can't disagree with this because it's from your I'm going to call it your home state just to rub it in. Self-driving cars found to be safer, except at dawn, dusk, or when turning. So, just half the day and half the things a car is expected to do. Self-driving cars are great in the other part of it.
I'm sorry. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but those times of day and that action, humans are also more susceptible to accidents.
But you don't get to pitch self-driving cars as the solution to humans and then be worse. Actually, the statistics are that they're worse than those bad humans. So absolutely, you want to pitch the Jetsons future where the cars don't drive themselves on the Jetsons. The Minority Report future where the cars drive themselves on the superhighways because they're safer. They're not safer yet. In fact, they do worse than humans do when humans already do poorly. So the self-driving cars are generally safer than cars driven by humans, according to the new study released. This was probably 2 months ago at this point. However, the cars were found to be more accident prone in certain scenarios. And that was a comparison of 2,100 autonomous vehicles and 35,000 human driven vehicles, trying to match the rough ratio of what's on the road today. And yeah, the answer is the software's not there. So if your stated goal for self-driving cars is to be safer than human beings, the science proves you're not there yet. And claiming that humans are also crappy, yeah, that was your thesis statement for inventing self-driving cars, is to be better than the crappy humans who also can't drive at dusk and dawn. But you haven't gotten there yet, guys.
Yeah, but humans have been driving for like 100 years and computers have been driving for what, like 3?
Yeah, that is exactly my point. You probably want to beta test these a little bit longer. We make kids have a permit for a while.
Yeah, but I will still point out, like, dusk and dawn are not that long. For the next 20 minutes, my car.
It's only when most commutes happen. At dusk
I'm
and
just
dawn.
saying.
Yeah.
I will agree, turning corners and being 5 times more likely to crash is not great.
Great.
Like, actually, no. When it's turning, it's 2 times more likely to have an accident.
Okay, good. It's just twice. Twice as bad. Yeah, it's like being drunk.
But 5 times more likely to have an accident. That's at the dawn, dusk.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's bad. You got to get it down to 2 or 3.
No, we got to get it to negative. Otherwise, you haven't proved the value thesis of why you're spending all this money. If you're not better than human beings at driving, then what are we doing here?
Well, we also need to account, like, there's accidents, but then there's fatalities. So that's...
Your insurance doesn't care. Your
No, no,
insurance
no.
is going to
But
screw you either way.
I do in the future want us to get to the granular point, which is,
I only maimed the child. Why are you suing me? He only lost a leg. He's alive.
I mean, that does impact the lawsuit, right?
I mean, it does affect the damages.
Yeah, it's just, you know.
No, it reminds me of the West Wing episode where Leo is trying to pitch the president on the missile defense shield, and the president asks him how did it go, and Leo says it met 9 out of the 10 criteria, and the president says, well, what was the 10th criteria? And Leo goes, stopping the missile from coming in, but all other 9 things that we were trying to do, we did get all other 9 checkpoints, and the president's like, it's that 10th. If only the missile defense shield didn't have to defend us from missiles, then this system would be worth the money. Great, good job. Like, self-driving cars, not better than people. So what are we doing here?
Give it 3 years.
Okay.
Let's have
sure.
this conversation again in 3 years.
Okay.
We'll see what the fatalities are like then.
So not everyone's self-driving car technology is paying off. GM is cutting spending by about $1 billion on their robotaxi unit Cruise. This comes after there were probes by the Justice Department and the Securities and Exchange Commission from an October 2nd accident in San Francisco in 2023, in which one of the robotaxis struck a pedestrian and dragged her for 20 feet. In 2023, Cruise, the unit within GM, burned through $1.9 billion in cash. That's a billion with a B, and had a $2.7 billion pre-tax loss, not including the $500 million in costs as a result of them making the change. So a cool close to $5 billion to not deliver a self-driving robotaxi, because this is hard. This is like a hard piece of technology, and I'm not surprised that a bunch of people jumped in thinking they could do it and then turned out that they couldn't. My other concern with all of this, though, is the side effect of this being a really hard problem to solve is we're going to end up with like 1 or 2 companies at most who have invested the amount of time and ideally more than Tesla the safety to actually deliver this, and that's also not good. Anyone can make a car these days because actually making a car is not that hard. You therefore have price and competition, and the market is actually, all things considered, there's a bunch of stupid things going on with the US car market, and the size of car is getting massive and stupid. But all things considered, you have some degree of competition in a way that I'm worried that this is a sign to me that like we're going to end up with Tesla and I don't know, one other company, Google and Waymo, as the self-driving car companies, and they're going to charge $100,000 for it.
Yeah, I don't know how you like with the 8 billion in losses though, like as a company.
That's the thing is like I'm actually not kind of surprised. Like, yeah, you're trying to invent a whole new piece of technology on your own. It is this weird thing where like I don't know, that'd be an interesting study to go and look at. I don't know enough about the history of the automobile. Did Henry Ford not patent the right part of the combustion engine? And so 70 other competitors were able to pop up and create their own cars. Like, there is a weird thing here where the technology investment required to get to self-driving cars is rightly going to be massive. And so it limits the scope of who can participate in that market. And therefore, I don't know, the chance we end up with a self-driving car monopoly seems pretty good. And that's terrible for consumers.
Yeah, I don't know. This one's a tough one for me because I don't go out. I don't go a lot of places, and I don't need a taxi ever. But I guess if you're in the city, like, yeah, this is a weird one for me because I just I think it was the current CEO, right, of Cruise, had said like this could be a $50 billion industry by 2030. Oh, that business could be 50 billion in annual revenue by 2030.
I'm sure people in Wall Street and financial private equity and places are looking at the fact that Uber clearly has demand from people who, I mean, if you're in New York City, take a yellow cab. The yellow cabs are perfectly fine. There's a million of them. There's nothing wrong with them. They are 90% of them are very, very nice and perfectly comfortable. Yes, they are. I lived in New York, man. I know what I'm talking about. Taxis are fine. The subway is fine.
That's not the worst thing about a cab, though, for most of us. It's like, I don't want to be in a cab with somebody else.
No, but this is what I'm saying is I think that there's this thing where there's clearly demand for Uber and Lyft, right? There's clearly demand for the ability to have more control over your ride. And so I think that opens the door to the idea that there's market for even now. I'm the person, like my Lyft settings were like, don't talk to me. Please have the air conditioning on, and I'm going to have earbuds in. I don't need small talk. That's not an important part of this interaction for me. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like I have nothing. I'm bad at small talk in general. It's not about you. It's not about me being like some privileged asshole. It is, I'm bad at small talk. I don't want to figure out how to have it with the person driving me. I feel bad enough I'm asking somebody to drive me somewhere. So like the idea of a driverless person, I sound like such a monster saying this. I get it. I understand that. And I can see them being able to look at Uber and Lyft's success and saying, ooh, we could improve the profit margin by cutting the human being out of that. And they hate the fact that drivers tried to unionize and all that kind of stuff. They hate the California law where you have to pay gig workers an actual livable salary. So yeah, I can see why people think there's billions of dollars here. And if you live in Seattle, the likelihood that you see a taxi driving down the street is much smaller. Like, I'm sure they exist. I can't tell you if I've seen them. And so calling an Uber or a robo taxi in the future, I get the appeal. I don't get it in New York or Chicago or Philadelphia. There are like 10 cities where this doesn't make sense, but I can kind of appreciate why people think there's a market in a bunch of other places.
You know what would be interesting as a parent is how many people would be willing to let their kid ride in a driverless cab without them?
I mean, yeah, you're not going to let your 13-year-old in an Uber for sure. And
Right.
if the safety was better, if you had actual track records, I think there's an interesting thing there. But then, like, it's called a bus. Most places have buses. Kids are used to riding on
Mm,
buses.
but then you have to sit next to other people and
I mean, this is the other problem I have with all of this is it's a wild waste of electricity to ferry one person around. That thing could carry four of you. Carpooling is a thing. It should
yeah,
it should
but
stop and pick up four other kids.
well, that's the thing though. Maybe
It's
the
called a bus.
maybe you could have like a divider in the car so you don't even have to see the other
To deal
person.
with people.
It's actually two rides.
The problem is you're a misanthrope and you just don't like human beings. And so you want everything to be catered to your ability to avoid other human beings. Most people aren't that way.
Is that a name for? Did you just name me a misanthrope?
Have you never heard of MISANTHROPE?
I actually
Misanthropy?
spelled it correctly. A person
Yeah.
who dislikes humankind. And oh my gosh, that's a name for me. Oh, isn't it great when you find you belong?
It's not a
It's
great
probably like,
club to be in, but yeah.
it's not, but at least you know they're not going to email you.
True.
It's like, hey, are we not meeting again this Thursday? No. Perfect. Great. I will
Amazing.
not see you guys there. Misanthrope.
Misanthrope.
I'm
That's
learning.
the
So you
perfect word
see,
for you.
listeners, you learn on this show.
Yeah, exactly. Another example of a self-driving car project that's died. We touched on this a couple of weeks ago, but Apple's Titan iCar project is officially dead. It was apparently Project Titan was launched in 2015, and there wasn't much information known about it. Some rough ideas of it would be a $100,000 self-driving car from Apple and would achieve, level 5 autonomy, which we talked about in the last episode about the different types of self-driving cars. Level 5 is the full, it does everything for you. You probably barely need a steering wheel. And by 2022, it sounds like Apple had decided, actually, no, wait, level 5 autonomy is really hard. Maybe we do need to give people a steering wheel and maybe their own gas pedal and brake. And so had already decided to try and dial back how autonomous it was. And it sounds like Apple finally threw in the towel just like GM did. So again, this just more evidence of we're headed towards a Google Tesla duopoly in this market, and concerning. Also, I feel like of all of the companies who could have done something interesting with a self-driving car, Apple would have produced what Tesla wishes it made, like an actual simple looking sleek car. It would have been $250,000 because Apple doesn't know how to make things on the cheap. But yeah,
Yeah, and it would have been like, I feel like,
it'd come in 4 different colors: rose gold and white. And
and I have to subscribe to something every time I climb in, and
says the dude who has to get his updates from Tesla if he pays the monthly fee.
but it's just
No. You're on a
Apple.
subscription plan with Elon Musk as well. You don't get to complain about Apple's.
It's like the apps I want in my car I can't have because Apple's like, no, we don't allow that in our marketplace. Give me an Android car. That's what I need. Yeah, I think I'm okay with the duopoly. I think let those with the know-how write it out, right? Like it's true, right? Like it's funny. I think about this one in terms of VR headsets, where I look at some of the companies who are releasing VR headsets, and I'm like, how are they doing that? Like, how are they building this thing from scratch? Like,
Sure.
they're going up against Meta and HP, and it's amazing to me that anybody would start trying to do this without the foundation of being like, it's kind of impressive from Google, but like
Right.
Tesla, I assume will stay ahead of the game, right? Because that's their forte. But all credit to Google the longer they stay in it. If it becomes a duopoly, I'd be more apt to climb in a Google car than a Tesla car.
Sure. It's still not great for price, and monopolies never end well for consumer pricing, but sure. It'll become a thing for the rich and elite to get to do, and the rest of everybody will get to die on the highways. It's Elysium. It's the floating magic place in the sky for the rich.
I guess the positive part of the duopoly is, or at least the way I view it is, let the guys who can afford to tackle the big problems, tackle them. And then we'll probably have competitors in the next 10 to 20 years, right? But they'll be riding on the back of the fact that Tesla and Google solved the hard problems. I guess that's where I am. Like, if you got 10 companies out there trying to innovate, then yeah, you start to question like how many of them are actually safe, right? So you let Tesla and Google answer the hard design issues, and then
My concern is, so like I would agree with you. Your comment about the VR headset is an interesting one because there's entire weird niche hardware markets for video gamers. There's a weird little video game thing that's smaller than it's smaller than the old tiny iPod Nano, and it has like a hand crank because there's 40,000 weird nerds who want a weird specialized type of very small video game. There are weird things that happen in hardware spaces because so much of hardware has become commoditized, and you want to compete with Google and Meta on your VR thing because you're the company that's going to build the really niche specific type of 8-bit video gamer headset that 40,000 people want. You're going to spend $5 million to make $30 million. You're going to convince investors of that, and you're going to be done in 2 years or whatever. Like there are things like that, and every once in a while one of you turns into the next Meta VR headset that gets acquired, right? But I'm worried that self-driving cars is too hard of a problem, that the commoditization of that is 20 years away. So we're stuck for the next 20 years in a duopoly and getting price gouged.
yeah, yeah. I guess it's one of the suck it up is the best way. Like, that's my attitude, right? Is like the British are exploited. Whenever I look at a Brit who lives there still, right? Like I escaped. I look at them and I'm like, you're so downtrodden and exploited. And that is to be British. We know, right?
I think the country of empire that colonized the world and exploited half the world doesn't really get to say that, but okay.
No. Wait. But it's the people I'm talking about. The people are exploited, right? They pay. I mean, look at what they pay for gas, right? Nobody in the world should pay that for gas.
Everyone in the world should pay that for gas so that we can stop being dependent on gasoline. That would force everybody to be open to.
We don't need to. The Brits are paying it for everybody, right? Like it's ridiculous. So the British are exploited, and by nature, like it is part of me too, right? Where I'm like, yes, it's frustrating that I don't know where my taxes go. It's even more frustrating than I find out that they're doing sperm whale testing, right? That's frustrating. But
No, not a thing.
but I just pay my taxes, and I know I'm going to get exploited, and I know someone's going to try to scam me, and I know that they're going to raise the prices and da 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 da. But that's progress, right? Let those guys trailblaze, and then in 10 to 20 years we'll have more competition. But you don't want to take the robo car? Buy yourself a Tesla.
Yeah, that's absolutely the path I'm going to go down.
Yeah, get yourself a Tesla. Love my Tesla.
Sure.
Thanks, Elon.
So speaking of Google and Tesla's only real competitor, Waymo has now taken its robo-taxi in San Francisco off the wait list and is open to everybody. So if you want to go experience what a self-driving car looks like, you can just go to San Francisco, and if you watch too much Fox News, you're going to think you have to dodge around a bunch of homeless people. It's not really true, but you can go and take a robo-taxi and find out what that's like.
That little homeless thing right there. Love that.
Yeah.
It's great. So wait a minute. I thought Waymo were getting out.
No, that's what they're saying. Is they're like, it's bad phrasing of this TechCrunch article. They're dumping their wait list. They're basically saying everyone now can go and get a robotaxi.
Oh, so they're ready to go in San Francisco.
They seem ready to go. Although they did just voluntarily have to issue a software recall to all 672 of its robotaxis after one of them collided with a telephone pole. So get into that robotaxi at your own risk.
Yeah, it's interesting though. It'll be interesting to see like how these things drive with two wheels because it's San Francisco, right? And if they slow down to less than 50 miles an hour, someone's going to be stealing pieces of the car off. I mean,
that's absolutely what it is.
It's a war zone in San Fran, so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. A war zone in which the liberals found a robotaxi and assaulted it by spray painting it and turning it into a giant art installation. It's devastation.
Is that what they did?
Yeah, did you not see that TikTok of the guys stuck in his robotaxi waiting at the light, and so like 7 people ambush the robotaxi and start spray painting it with a bunch of tags and art on it because the guy can't do anything about it. He's just stuck in the passenger seat waiting for the light to turn green.
That's Antifa.
Anarchy. Yeah, absolutely.
Antifa.
The horror of spray paint.
Yeah.
And then speaking of, do you want to let it chauffeur your kids? Waymo also wants to figure out if they can offer Waymo Teen, where you would pay a monthly subscription of either $150 to $250 per month for up to 16 rides. So you can do the math. That's at least $10 to $20 a ride for your teen to get wrapped around a telephone pole. Not because they're an idiot and drunk driving, but because their robotaxi crashes into it. So one way or another, kids aren't safe in cars apparently. But yeah, yay.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. Like, this is good. Yeah, I don't know. Like, most of the rides are going to be in the city. They're going to be less than 30 miles an hour, right? Like,
Hmm.
traffic. I just don't see this being the big catastrophe. I think it's going to be fine.
It's called a bus. Kids in the cities take
Oh
buses. They take the
no,
subway. They absolutely do.
no.
Any child who lives in the city, I guarantee you, the New York kids, at least the non-rich, non-white ones, know how to take a bus or the subway. They do just fine. It's not a problem. This is for the kids. This is for the kids in the suburbs, and that car is going to be doing 60 miles an hour on I-90 to go from suburb A to suburb B. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
I want to see the statistics on how many people get mugged on the bus.
You got to stop watching
It's
Fox News. Crime is
it's just,
down across the country. You're more likely to get murdered in a red city than in a blue city. The red states have a crime problem in a way that the blue states don't. You don't want to fight me on statistics about crime. Fox News is lying to you.
the last time I was on a bus, I'm pretty sure the person next to me was eating a cat.
It's just.
Good on you, Waymo.
Yeah, sure. Let's see how it works. Oof. So our last car news is once again returning to Tesla because I can't stop making fun of how bad Elon Musk is at his job. They had a big robotaxi event of their own to announce that they had this giant half bus, not really a taxi, this weird giant computer mouse that drove down the road and had 8 people inside of it. Called it a robotaxi. Couldn't really tell us any details. The article from futurism.com, the flashy presentation left plenty of glaring questions unanswered. For one, the company didn't show off the long-awaited Model 2, a rumored $25,000 passenger vehicle that shareholders have said could help the company boost sales. Investors in particular were left wanting more, with Tesla shares dropping 6% in pre-market trading after the robotaxi event because it was all flash and no actual substance. He couldn't commit to sometime in the next 2 years they might have a robotaxi, but it's Elon, known liar who's been fined by the SEC for lying, Elon Musk. Yeah, it was a giant PR event that was full of nonsense and yeah, it was a bizarre event. Did you see this ugly f***ing car?
No, no, I'm trying to find a.
Go look at an image of this weird wheelless, like that thing isn't going to go over speed bumps. It's one of those, it's again, who is allowed to design these things without thinking through? It's the hyperloop, the death tube that doesn't have emergency exits as you should have every 250 feet. So if a car catches on fire in the hyperloop, you're going to die. This bus doesn't have anything, like it has a weird thing that rides low to the ground. So again, simple things like speed bumps and potholes are going to fully ruin this car. It is not an actual thought out thing. It was a press event to highlight that he's cool and future thinking, and we'll talk about in just a second how bad that went for him.
Yeah, so what's the model they did show? They didn't show the Model 2,
They
which
didn't
is
show the Model 2, which is the cheap Model S replacement that investors want them to release. They instead showed the, whatever they called it, the Cyber Bus or something.
the Cyberbus.
Look up Cyber Bus. It is, you're gonna like it because it looks like it's Blade Runner.
Oh no, it's not this.
Yes.
No, well,
Yes.
there's some concept stuff.
The giant
here.
mouse with the line of white around it. And no, you can't see the wheels. The weird thing goes right to the ground. Look at that thing. There's no way it handles a pothole. There's no way it goes over a speed bump. This thing is not serious. It is Elon spending $5 million on a crappy prototype that no one's ever going to see the light of day.
Yeah, it's really funny because you know the big rusty thing that Jawa's riding in Star
Yes,
Wars.
it looks exactly like that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So at the event were what they called Tesla Optimus bots, and they were allegedly little robots going around serving people as the waiters. So Elon didn't have to pay unionized wait staff to staff his event. He could have these little robots, and everyone at the event was like, "Oh my gosh, Tesla has robots that can serve me a drink and can respond to my commands." Nope. Turns out he didn't. All of those robots were piloted by human beings because, again, Elon is all about smoke and mirrors. He doesn't have robots that can do any of that. He had human beings piloting them from a little tent, at the back of the lot or something. Once again, it's just everything about this man and this company is nonsense. It's not real. It's all for the purpose of making his brand appear better, but there is no self-driving car. There is no cyber bus. There were no self-automated robots doing everything. Everything he said about these things was a lie. Because that's all he knows how to do.
They look cool though.
They don't. They look like iRobot robots. Will Smith is going to have to beat them down.
They look great.
No.
I would definitely buy one of these when they sell these,
Good. It'll just,
without doubt. They're so cool looking.
as it tucks your kids in and accidentally strangles one of them. Yeah, good luck with the
See,
help around the house.
I would want one in my self-driving car. See,
You want the robot to drive the robot.
yeah. But I mean, I don't care if the robot's driving, right?
What
But
do you need it in the car then for? Okay, keep going.
because I have a problem with humans. I don't have a problem with talking. But if I'm sitting in the vehicle with the Optimus Gen 2 and I basically have the internet and it's like I can have a conversation, the type of conversation I would want to have, right?
You have a wife and kids. Do you not talk to them in the car?
But but if we're in the car, right? Like
Uh-huh.
I don't need the self-driving piece, right? Like if I'm with the family. Like I probably wouldn't let the car drive if the kids are in it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there you go.
I like driving, so
Uh-huh.
I would just drive.
Uh-huh.
But if it was just me leaving the airport, I wouldn't. It would be nice if there was an Optimus Gen 2 in it. You remember like in Running Man, the original? Not Running Man, Total Recall, the original?
The robot
Johnny Cab? The
driver.
Johnny
Yeah,
Cab
yeah.
has Johnny in there?
Is
Yeah.
the Johnny Cab scene the one where he pulls the thing out of his nose? Is he in the Johnny Cab when he pulls the
Yeah,
red
yeah,
ball
yeah.
out of his nose? Yeah. That was a
Yeah,
scene, by the way.
yeah.
The human nose doesn't stretch like that. There's no way that wouldn't have just ripped his nose right open. That's gross. We're
Oh,
gonna have
they
to cut
definitely
that.
they do stretch though.
I don't want to know this. No.
Yeah, I've had a few things up there in the past where it's like,
I'm gonna have to cut all
yeah,
of this.
they
All
stretch.
right. So the final glorious icing on this stupid robotaxi cake from Elon is during the presentation, there was let me find the quote here, a lightly stylized fake screen still screen, which was displayed prominently during the Wii robot presentation. During the event, Musk mentioned the Blade Runner franchise by name while describing sci-fi depictions of the future, and the live stream cut to an image depicting a man wearing a duster jacket and standing in front of a ruinous apocalyptic cityscape, explicitly evoking Blade Runner. And it turns out that previous to the event, they knew that in order to use Blade Runner imagery, they would have to clear it with legal and the company that owns the rights to Blade Runner. And they tried, and Blade Runner and the company who owns the rights to Blade Runner explicitly denied Tesla's ability to do that. And the quote from the company, Alcon, any prudent brand considering any Tesla partnership has to take Musk's massively amplified, highly politicized, capricious, and arbitrary behavior, which sometimes veers into hate speech, into account. Alcon did not want Blade Runner 2049 to be affiliated with Musk, Tesla, or any Musk company for all these reasons. That is the reason Alcon denied Tesla's ability to use the image, and then Tesla went ahead and took the Blade Runner images, fed them into probably Grok, the Twitter crappy AI, and generated some images directly based on Blade Runner, quoted Blade Runner when showing the images, and so of course Alcon, the owner of the rights, is now suing Elon and Tesla because Elon is a lawless psychopath who you probably have no problem with this because all content is free, even though you like Blade Runner. And anyway, yeah, no, Elon and Tesla are bad at everything and they're getting sued for it, which they should.
Yeah, this one's a weird one because I like Blade Runner, so
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of
Uh-huh.
I might be Team Alcon on this one. Like,
Yep.
this one's a bit shady because they requested beforehand and were denied,
Right. It's not ask for forgiveness later. It was
which I'm surprised by because that in a way is and I'd probably be the same way if I was Musk. Like these guys are making a mockery, right? Like it's almost like the guy who's like, hey, I don't mind getting a parking ticket in Boston because it's cheaper than actually parking in the garage, right? If you can find a space.
Sure.
So these guys are almost like it's a fine. I feel like Musk is almost okay where I get fined $20 million.
This is the problem. They bake these fines, they bake their lawlessness into their budgets, and their budget just has, it's not called breaking the law as the line item, but it's basically breaking the law as the line item, and you just assume that you have to cover that.
I feel like we'd all do that though, right? If we had Musk's money.
Which is why no one should have Musk's money. Because everyone would do this. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely is a quote that makes sense for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, in all fairness, like I feel like Musk shouldn't have said Blade Runner because it could look like Mad Max, right?
No, you take a look at the images. It was so blatantly Blade Runner.
Like definitely kind of like Blade Runner,
Yeah.
but could also just be Mad Max.
No, Mad Max is dusty and brown, not neon and bisexual purple and blue.
But where are you seeing that?
In the images in the article.
Oh no, the one I'm looking at is an image from Tesla's Wii Robot event, and it's brown, and there's the city skyline in the background. It looks very Mad Max-esque.
Okay. Sure.
Apart from the leather jacket, of course.
Right, the blatant Harrison Ford promo, yeah.
It's the fact that they asked for permission ahead of time that's
Yep.
suspicious. Because
Yep.
it's like
They knew what they were doing.
it looks like Mad Max until you find out they actually requested from
Right.
Alcon, and then you're like, okay,
Okay,
it,
well,
it looks a little like
now I
Blade
know what
Runner.
you did. Yeah.
I like Musk, but I'm not a Musk fanboy. But I love in the comments, like you can see the Musk fanboys where it's like that Tesla image is substantially different from Blade Runner. Bad lawyers, bad. It's like,
Come on, man.
dude,
Just
even I'm biased, but
Just
even I
own
can
up.
see it's Blade Runner.
Exactly. All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Acceptance Criteria. To read articles that we've written on similar topics to the ones we talk about here, head over to the blog at acceptancepod.com. You can also follow us on most apps. We're at acceptancepod. We'll post links to show notes and any articles from the blog over there.
And a friendly reminder that we are always interested in hearing questions directly from you, our listeners, for our segment User Stories. If you've got a scenario you'd like help with, whether it's working with an engineering or product team member, or trying to figure out how to solve an agile process problem, or you just can't understand why your favorite app updated everything and now it's terrible, we're here to talk it through with you. You can send those questions to acceptancepod@gmail.com or submit them on the Discord in the User Stories channel, and we might be able to help on a future episode. And we're happy to keep it anonymous so no one can trace it back to you if you end up talking to coworker or something.
For now, I'm Kevin Thomas Euland, and you can find me on most apps at ktomasuland. That's ULLAND.
And I'm Andrew Greener, and you can find me on most apps at Criteria Greener. That's GREINER. And this has been Acceptance Criteria. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you.